We have Studio 101 recording here in the tiny metropolis of Woodruff, South Carolina.
Who's this dude from South Carolina? Why in the world would I drive 4 hours to this studio to work?
That was also unheard of at the time. You know, there wasn't really any, there were not any studios in this area of South Carolina at the time.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on AI.
Oh, man, jeez.
Welcome back to the Studio 101 recording podcast. I am not Brad Phillips, but I am sitting across from Brad Phillips. I am Andrew, your host today. And today, Brad has been so kind to be interviewing all of us, the other engineers, in the past couple episodes. And today, Brad's on the hot seat. He's going to get grilled today by me, the other podcast guy.
Yeah, right.
So, Brad, how are we doing today?
Doing well, man.
You've talked for many hours today.
This is weird to be like This is like role reversal weirdness.
You've been here for 4 hours.
Yeah. I know.
and now you're over there.
Right. It is what it is.
It is what it is. So Brad, for the people who may be stumbling upon us for the first time and don't know who you are, give them just kind of like the quick 1-2 of who you are and what you do.
Cool. So we have Studio 101 recording here in the tiny metropolis of Woodruff, South Carolina, in the upstate of South Carolina. We have been here operating a commercial studio since the year 2000. So we're almost to 25 years, which is wild. It blows my mind. And so I finished Belmont University. I did their music business program with an emphasis in audio engineering. I lived up there for about 5 years, I guess, and then moved. This is home for me. I grew up here in South Carolina. Yes.
Okay.
And the house I grew up in used to be like right out in front of the studio building. It's no longer there, but that's a story for another time.
Sure.
But the studio building was built kind of in the backyard of the house that I grew up in. And when I moved back here to South Carolina, I kind of just decided to go for it with the commercial studio space and super young and dumb and had literally no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
Jumped in, got the studio up and running here and have kind of survived 25 years of, changing technology and different approaches and, all the things we've morphed remodeling the studio and doing all kinds of things. We have remodeled twice, I guess, in 25 years. So, but yeah, we've been operating here as a commercial studio in this area for about 25 years and still trying to plug along and do all the things.
Do the thing
here
in the small town of Woodruff, South Carolina. And it's crazy that the studio's been here that long. I can think of many a studio that is in a much larger area or a much more commercially viable area that hasn't lasted half that long.
Yeah.
And it's crazy that you're sitting trucking along to year 25 pretty strong. So
well, we're rolling along and we've been extremely blessed with great clients and been able to expand in the past year. I guess this time last year we started an expansion to the building, adding a B room and also an Atmos room.
Yep.
So kind of took the plunge into the Atmos world and just trying to get a leg up on the area and really the state of South Carolina. There's not really a lot of access to Dolby rooms
in the Southeast in general. From what I understand, there's a couple in Nashville, maybe one in Atlanta, but the one in Atlanta is owned by a major label, so it's not like really open to everybody.
And Glenn at GAT3 has just like annihilated everyone in the entire nation as far as the level of ability with the Atmos thing.
Yeah. And Glenn, I always forget that. I always forget that he when he does a thing, he's like goes full send.
Oh my gosh,
he goes full send.
It's crazy. I was texting him the other day about.
Shout out Glenn. Shout out Glenn Tabor, man.
Yeah, I was texting him the other day about their Atmos stuff, and it's just absolutely insane what they've done. But anyway, that's beside the point. But we're trying to I guess just to give a little insight to the area that we live in here, it's a booming, growing top 5 or top 10 city in the United States as far as growth goes.
It has been, so Greenville, upstate South Carolina in general, but mainly centered around Greenville City, has been a top 10 growing in the last 10 years and top 5 in the last like 2 or 3.
Yeah, it's wild. People are moving here from California, New York. People are moving here in droves,
dude.
and it has a lot to do with the industry and the job availability that we have here. We have
cost of living difference as well.
Yeah, it's living in Nashville now. I don't know. I don't know if I could afford to live in Nashville now.
Oh God,
I don't know how people are doing it, but it's that's 100% true. The cost of living is much lower here, and property is available, real estate's available, all those things.
And with that comes a lot of creatives. So I've introduced you to some friends of mine who've come from LA and come from Atlanta, come from New York, all these places, and it's very interesting to see that like when growth comes, all of the arts kind of start booming alongside of it. I mean, we've even seen, you've said you're from here originally. I'm also from the upstate originally. And over the course of the time that, we've both, obviously you longer than I have, but even like in the course of this time frame, we've seen bands blow up, artists blow up, take off. Yeah. You were talking to Donnie, like Hootie and the Blowfish, those kind of things. But even on the Southern gospel side, artists like the Martins, like coming here to do their records and like being, massively successful, both Christian and more mainstream popular artists. Yeah. It's pretty nuts.
Yeah. And, I guess it's just sort of a given that if you have more people moving into an area, you're going to have more opportunities for clientele and for, there's growth of, new schools and
sure.
New businesses, new homes, all the things bringing more people in. I think it expands as far as your local clientele base. It's definitely much, much wider here than it ever has been.
Oh, well, and it's funny weirdly, yes, it's been growing, but the two that I just mentioned were 90s.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So maybe stepping back into there, because you kind of came up in that era of that was pre you going to Nashville, pre doing that. What was your early experience in recording studios with some of maybe like your mentors in the early years?
Yeah, I had an opportunity on several occasions to sit in on some live band tracking sessions and stuff that were going on at Mark V Studios, which was used to be located on White Horse Road in Greenville, and it had actually sort of set itself up as one of the premier studios kind of in the southeast-ish region, The Huffman brothers had built Mark V. I can't remember the year, but I believe it was in the 60s. And that was also unheard of at the time. There wasn't really there were not any studios in this area of South Carolina at the time.
There were rarely studios out in the 60s outside of a major A-list city.
Right. So, that the history of that particular studio and being able to sort of be a fly on the wall in those sessions with Eddie Howard, who was the house engineer there. There was a Neve console that was in there, 2-inch tape. The room was tuned like perfectly. It was just a really, really great the tracking. I can't remember the dimensions of the tracking room over there, but it's huge, parquet floors. Just being a 13, 14-year-old kid who was interested in playing guitar and possibly being involved in the recording world, and having people that were willing to say, hey, this little snot-nosed kid that doesn't know anything, it might be interested in the recording world. Hey, let's bring him in, let him hang out, check out what's going on, and see how all of this works, and get a view of like what it takes to make a record at that time. super thankful to all the people that allowed me to just come in and, take up a space in the studio at the time, just to be able to understand and learn kind of what was going on, how things worked at the time. Sure. Yeah.
And so now from there, you got the bug, basically. Yep. Went to Nashville, did your schooling. And we did a whole episode already where all of us, about the school stuff. So we don't need to necessarily get into that, but you guys can go back and check that out if you want a more deep dive on the how we all feel about the education side of music stuff. But at the time that you went, it was very I won't say early Nashville, because it was pretty established at that point. Yeah. It was, but early compared to what it is now, for sure. Mm-hmm. What was a big thing that you learned from being in Nashville at that time?
So at the time that I was there, so basically 95 to 2000, 94, 95 to 2000-ish was, if you follow country music or care about country music, that was kind of the prime of the height, I guess, sort of, of the country music production world and labels and publishing companies. There was a lot of money being pumped through Nashville at that time.
It was also, from what I remember, the crossover period. That was when country started crossing over into the mainstream charts.
Alan Jackson said it best, "Gone country, man."
Yeah, for sure. Well, and you had Keith Urban crossing over into rock pop country stuff, and then that era was the beginning of that.
It was an amazing time to be in. Nashville is the music city, but any music city, Nashville was an incredible place to be at that point in time in history. Nashville was spending $500,000, $600,000 on a record for a brand new artist.
That's crazy.
That's absolutely nuts. Yeah. And and knowing the fact that you're going to release a brand new artist and you're going to recoup all of that. They were confident. It was just going to happen.
Yeah. They were printing money.
Please don't, somebody's going to misquote me on this, but there's always exceptions. But the fact that type of budget was available for records at that point in time, that and perspective is, you might get a $50,000 budget for a record in Nashville right now, but that's probably stretching it a little bit.
Yeah,
it's not the same. It's not the same money, and it has a lot to do with the fact that physical CD sale copies were driving the business, every business, and the Hootie and the Blowfish thing, already mentioned, came along in that same time frame, and the millions of physical copies that they sold generated millions of dollars, where everybody was making their dollar, or $1 million. Whatever that equates to. But just living in Nashville at that time, and going to Belmont. Belmont had a direct plug-in connection to the music industry. You could walk out the front doors of the Belmont mansion onto Music Row and have an internship with Warner Records or Universal or whoever. You could get an internship there,
or be an assistant at an Ocean Way, or
any and all of those things were available at that time.
Vortex,
and the internship program was literally all of your free. You just gave it away for free. But the fact that I still have friends and people who were there that got a job from that internship, or now they're the job they got after they graduated led to now they're president of Sony. All the things that played out by, in my opinion, being trained to function in the music business in that era has helped sustain a lot of the businesses that are there now. Without that generation of people that came through, I don't know what it would look like, to be real honest with you. But it's super different now.
It's very different now.
When you're coming out of the music business program, and somebody's probably going to shoot me, but when you're coming out of the music business program at Belmont now, it's not the same opportunity that was available, 30 years ago. It's just not the same opportunity.
So I have a buddy who came out of the Belmont music program. He's a vocal tuner and assistant for a guy named Matt Huber, really big mix engineer, mixes a bunch of Sony and like UMG artists and
Sure.
stuff. But him getting that job had nothing to do with the fact that he went to Belmont.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, everything that the reason he got that job was because Matt was a Nashville guy, and Tanner was just working with some of the artists that ended up going to Matt, and he prepped the sessions well.
Yeah.
And then Matt was like, "Do you need a job? Do you want to be my assistant?" Because he prepped a session well for him, and he was like, "Heck yeah!" Had nothing to do with anything. The fact that he went to Belmont never even came up.
Yeah.
And then another instance is a girl who went to Belmont for like a music business degree decided she wanted to be an artist. So she just became an artist, and it had nothing to do with the fact that she went to Belmont.
Yeah. It's and I am incredibly thankful for the time that I had there at Belmont, and the program that was in place is, I would not have had some of the knowledge that I have now without that program, and definitely would not have the network of people that I have access to without being there and being in that program at the time.
Yeah.
And but that period of time in Nashville was it was just amazing. I mean, it was really an amazing time to be an artist and a label and a publisher and a songwriter and all the things. It was just really, really great to say, like, hey, I was there, and I saw, such and such artist who was a writer at EMI Publishing that got a record deal, and, I was in the demo room with them and downstairs in the basement with Chris Latham, when he was tracking these demos for these songs that got put out on the radio. It was a really cool experience, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
It's a very, very different experience, especially. Yeah, that's very cool though. So then you decide to come back. Now let's do the impossible and give me a quick synopsis of the 24-year life of the studio.
Oh my gosh!
So no, we don't have to do that. But you came back. You decided, I'm gonna do the studio here, and then kind of give me some of maybe the highlights or lowlights or some of the punch points with the studio from the last couple of years, because it's been. I heard a conversation with you and TJ, and it's been a ride. Yeah,
it's an interesting deal, to say the least. My wife and I got married, and I intended to. I had in my mind we were going to live in Nashville.
Yeah,
we got married, and we were going to live in Nashville, and I kind of put this on Leanne sometimes, and she just, here's the way that I remember it. She came to me and said, "You know what? I think we should move to South Carolina." And I'm like, have all these gigs booked and, session work booked and stuff. And I'm going like, what? And so it's kind of that, it kind of set in motion a lot of the decisions we make in our marriages. We're just like, this is what we feel like we need to do, so we're doing it.
We're going to go with it, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's what we did. We moved down here, and the studio building was already here. My dad and my uncle and a good friend of ours, Dickie Brown, kind of put all this together, and it was like a man cave studio in the backyard of the house that was just right out the front door. And those guys never really had a vision for a commercial studio necessarily, And then I came in, and I was here and available, and I was, I put in about a year's work and was like, hey guys, what would you think if I opened this up to clients and try to do this thing? And I kind of went to school to get an audio engineering degree.
Yeah. Let's use this
It's
thing.
Wonder what would happen if we tried this. And man, I don't recommend that to anyone ever. If you're listening or watching, I don't recommend it at all.
It takes a special kind of person to start
a special kind of crazy or weird. I don't know what it is.
We're all insane, Brad.
Something, yeah.
We're all insane.
And my wife has reminded me of that for a lot of years now.
Oh, yeah.
But we started it, and we had a few people coming in, and we were making a little money, not a whole lot. And, the hang up at that point was the clientele base was super small here at that point in time.
And the technology was changing.
Yeah, we had ADATs, man. Like
yeah.
we had ADATs and a Mackie.
But in a 5-year
3200.
period, you went from tape to ADATs to Pro Tools.
I mean, basically, I think at one point we had, I'll try to remember the progression. I think we had ADAT. No, we had ADATs period to start with.
Okay.
And then we did the transition to Mackie D8B digital board with a Mackie HDR recorder. We were fully digital, like it was all digital.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I spent a month banging my head against the wall. No offense to Mackie, but the D8B was a nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
It was a literal nightmare of syncing stuff together. And
Can't
like,
imagine.
And like, it was almost like the old Nintendo thing where you pull the card out and blow on the card and then you put it back in.
Yeah.
I kid you not. We went through all of that nonsense.
Basically, I had a giant N64.
Oh my God. And then, but yeah, it did eventually transition to, I moved everything to Pro Tools. PC. I built a PC from parts that I put together.
This was 2004?
Like 3 or 4, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And so I was like, might as well go all in, do the thing, and got locked into a license for Pro Tools that now I have extended for however many years and have to pay for it all the time now.
You're in it.
Taking a shot at Avid.
You're in it for the long haul.
It is what it is.
Avid. Don't do us like that, dude.
Yeah, but I had to choose I had to choose a route. You know what I mean? Like I had to choose a path as far as the format of the studio going forward. And I went with the Pro Tools deal because like that was the industry stand. I mean, like if you're gonna go to software at that time, there really wasn't anything else. Cakewalk, I guess.
Yeah, but I feel like it's a testament to you that you made that jump because, well, one, from a cost effectiveness, it did make a lot of sense for you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But you came up doing reels.
Yeah.
And it could have been easy for you to say, well, I'm just going to stick to this. This is what I know. Especially a lot of engineers stuck to it a little too long.
Yeah. And I think I mentioned this in another podcast, but like I've always been of the mindset of like at least giving certain technologies a try because I'm interested in like how this works. Is this going to work better? Is this going to be more effective? Am I going to be more efficient in these things? But, we jumped in with the Pro Tools thing and it just kind of stuck with me. I'm not a hater of Logic and Ableton and all the stuff. It just kind of is what it is. And we do a lot of live band tracking stuff here. So in my mind, the way it's laid out, it just makes sense to me.
No, I understand.
But anyway, so we plugged along for several years, and in the market crash and all of the financial crash of 2008, the studio crashed and burned along with it. 100% transparency. That was really, really terrible. That was a really, really terrible time for not only me, but for a lot of people. And it
was the thing that almost actually put Greenville itself down for the count.
Sure. And being super naive, young and dumb, all the words, I'm self-aware. Like I had no plan, no nothing. Like it just crashed and burned. So I'm out like doing some part-time jobs and all this stuff and trying to figure out things for about 2 years and really didn't do much studio stuff for almost like 2 years because there just wasn't. We weren't in a position here where I'm at, like where there was like a ton of work to be done. It just wasn't there. It wasn't happening,
and people weren't traveling for records outside of larger cities.
Not really. I mean, it wasn't a thing at that point.
Well, and it's hard to. This is 2008 is pre-mass internet as we know it now.
Oh, absolutely.
Like internet existed, but it was more like generic Google
not
search.
Really even Facebook. Maybe you had MySpace, but definitely not really.
MySpace, yeah. But you didn't really have like business search. Like you weren't doing social like you do now, where it's like you can be known by people across the country.
Right.
And like getting a band from North Carolina to come do a thing with you is pretty normal.
Yep.
But then it was more of a like, who's this dude from South Carolina? Why in the world would I drive 4 hours to this studio to work? It's not a thing.
Not really a thing at all whatsoever. But I think it was around 2010. I kind of got the bug to like revive some things. So we redid some gear. And
was that remodel number one?
Kind of, yeah, but it was mostly gear more than anything.
Gotcha.
And I was involved with a church plant thing at the time, and we could use the space for rehearsals. We could do some recording for stuff that we needed, and that revived a little bit of it. And then in 2014, I sat down with my wife and I was like, I really think this could be a viable deal if I like really go after this thing, like all in, quote Dabo, I guess.
Yeah.
But just go all in, like tear out everything, literally everything, all the paint, all the floors, all the everything, and just advertise it as a completely new thing.
Make it presentable again.
New logo, all the stuff, all the gear, and she was like, you have lost your mind. And I was like,
probably.
This is kind of what I do, I guess. This is what audio engineers do, right? Or creatives.
Oh, yeah. Creatives
and so we did. She was on board, and we just went literally all in. And like, since then, I have just, it's hard to explain, like, how much of the right decision that was.
Oh, yeah.
And especially when you go into something like that and you're just committing, like, if this doesn't happen, I have no plan B. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you really go all in with it, and you're like, this has got to be what happens.
There was a couple of instances, just thinking about back to that time, because I'm trying to think. 2014, I was working full time at Marathon, I believe, in 2014.
Okay,
and it's an interesting. You had the rise of multiple things happening at the same time. You had the rise of internet music as we know it now. So like SoundCloud stuff in general was becoming more so, like home studio production was becoming more of like a prevalent thing, but people needed good places to track bands still. So like studios to track instruments were still more of a thing.
Right.
You had a large uptick in church original music for smaller churches. New Spring being a very good example of that. I know, like early on, that was one of the bigger clients for you guys, probably more regular clients for you guys.
Yeah.
The uptick of that. And then you started getting like indie labels getting more flush with cash and being willing to spend money on smaller. So like it all starts to like come together in that time. Whereas like in 2008, all of that industry was gone.
Yeah, it was nuts. And, like, my friend Eddie Howard that I talked about earlier from Mark V, he had his own studio when Mark V closed, and I had a conversation with him, and he was like, this is not viable anymore. I just can't see how the studio is a viable thing anymore. And home studios and gear that you could purchase at Guitar Center was, man, it was just like everywhere. And I don't know, man, I just kind of stuck to my guns and was like, I'm going to just keep plugging because like the live tracking capability of real people being in a room is a thing that I don't want to go away. Yeah. And like having this room here available and being able to track bands, being able to hire in live pro session musician people to work on records for people is something that in our area right here that I wanted to like, I was just dead set on like, we're going to keep doing this. Yeah. And, so, thankfully I've tried to keep that torch going, so to speak. Yeah. And it's not that I'm a hater for home studios or a hater for home producers. Like that is not my mindset whatsoever. Yeah. It's just the fact that like, I think both can coexist, and there's a setting for kind of what we do here, that we track live bands and live vocals and all the things, and then it's producers who have home studios a lot of times will call me, hey, we need to track drums at your place. Sweet, that's why the place is here.
Exactly,
that's the thing.
Well, and there are certain genres that lean towards being all in the same room together. So, Private Violet's a really good example of a band that's like a pop band, but their sound necessitates like real drums, real bass, real guitar. Yeah. And then all the keys, and like we track the vocals here, but all the keys and stuff are programmed and done, at Reed's, Reed did it at his house.
Yeah.
But it all comes together in this like very jazz pop alt kind of way that you can't do. You could have technically do it in a home studio, but it would be way more complicated.
Yeah. Right.
Rather than just coming here and everything's just available.
Yeah. And I guess sort of to kind of land the plane from your question, so to speak, is like the fact that, the way that we have this room set up lends itself to very easy, 12 mics of drum tracks and communication between everyone in the room is just as streamlined. My brain has tried to figure out to be as streamlined as humanly possible, make everything easy as possible.
Yep.
But I guess the last thing that I'll interject, I guess, is the fact that like my vision for this physical building has always been to try to keep it a commercial studio space, like the old days, throwback to Mark V, whatever, however you want to look at it, in the fact that, there's like 5 of us guys who engineer from here, and we all kind of really specialize in different things. So when a client cold calls and says, I need a hardcore record, we got your guy, come in and track it. Here's the price. That's what I wanted to keep alive here in the upstate of South Carolina, is a space that, hopefully it sounds really good. Hopefully we have the gear and everything that makes a project, just no matter if there's an outside producer coming in or whoever it is that's coming in, that we can give you a really great experience from a commercial studio side of things. And we want to serve the client super well. We want to serve the project super well. And, thankfully have been able to keep that going. With the expansion, we added the Atmos room, which is a entirely new technology. We have a whole other podcast on that. But, just kind of the vision coming out of my head and trying to see it come to fruition. That's where I've been driving this bus for all these years.
And jumping off of that, we have, you said you have the Atmos room. We also have the B room, where we have been able to, I know that's been an idea that you and Ian have had for a really long time. It's like have this revolving door of stuff, and like you finally been able to see it fully realized, which has been really cool. We had a day where that was happening. And if a client is like, we want to knock out a bunch of songs, and it's like an artist in a band or something, you have like the players in here knocking out stuff, somebody editing, and then Ian over here like getting the session from you, going over and tracking vocals while the band is continuing to work on other projects. And it's this nice like revolving constant thing, and an artist is able to walk in with nothing and walk out with well-tracked, rough mix, ready to go a lot of the times out the door.
Close,
pretty close to like a good mix coming away from that. How many ever songs in a weekend? 10 or so.
Well, that's kind of another piece of the vision that's kind of always been in my mind for independent artists who don't have their own band and they want to hire session players, and that's an affinity that I have for the session player world that I don't want to let die either, is the fact that there are some incredibly amazing musicians that can come into this room right here and play together and create some just wildly great stuff.
We have an incredible roster of musicians. So we have a podcast that will probably come out after this with some of them, but even outside of those 3, we have so many more that are just as capable that do regular work here on regular sessions. I mean, I think I've been in here and engineered a ton of sessions, and I don't think I've ever seen the same configuration of guys.
Yeah. And it's, I think I've mentioned this before, but I'll reiterate this fact that like I believe with all my heart that where we live right here is a tiny little anomaly of hidden gems of musicians and production, creativity, and all the things. And I I've kind of joked with my friends that live in Nashville and do the Nashville thing, like, hey guys, like, we got kind of a cool thing going down here, and it's like, you can believe me or not, but like I have access to some like really heavy hitters that like do session work that live within 35 minutes of here. And they're driving to Nashville because your guy booked them, but they live here by me, and they can be here to my place in 35 minutes,
and
which
charge you half the cost because they don't have to drive forever.
Yeah, and it's and not to get into a rabbit trail, but this area of North Carolina, South Carolina, has always generated amazingly talented musician type people that that typically kind of supply the Nashville line of stuff. There's obviously many genres of incredible musicians from this area. I'm not just pigeonholing it to country, but like it's interesting to me, and it's super cool to me that we live in an area and come from an area that, like, I proudly will say there is some amazing musicians, producers, things that are here. They're like living here.
They do it full time. They do it on their own. They do it. Sometimes they work with major labels. Sometimes they also work with a lot of indie artists. Yeah. And it's really cool. Like, even just the guys that work here, even guys the engineers that work out of here, the players that work out of here, the some full time, some part time, but like they make a solid living doing music, and that's and then other people that I've introduced you to who do even just video that we've partnered with, or like Daniel, who's helped us with some video work here, or Aaron, who's helped us set up this podcast setup, and like all of these people that are doing, even outside of music, just creative work here in general is amazing. Yeah. The fact that we have this little bubble of somehow there's a lot of work to go around for everybody here. And like, even as the area grows, like we were saying, the amount of work just continues to go up and up and up and up and up.
It's a little hidden gem here. The cat is going to be let out of the bag sooner than later. Sure. But it's happening whether you believe us or not. Yeah. And my town's cooler than your town. And it might be happening somewhat in your town, but this is what's happening right here, right now. And I'm proud of it. I'm proud to be a part of it.
For sure. Hopefully
contributing in a positive way.
Yeah.
Those kind of things.
So I have a weird kind of left field question. Because you tend to be on the up and up of stuff, and you tend to try to like think forward as far as technology and stuff. I'd love to hear your thoughts on AI.
Oh man, geez. Okay, so yes, I am 100% in favor of technology. All of the stuff, just like, I've always been enamored by like NASA and space exploration and the latest, greatest technologies of whatever, science, medical, whatever. Yeah, I love that stuff. I guess I'm kind of nerdy that way. Yeah. But especially when it pertains to the music world. The only thing that I will say that worries me a little bit is the fact that if at some point AI is, powerful enough to replace all of us that do what we do creatively, that's like not the greatest position to be in my point of view. And like, there's been some singles that have been released recently with AI generated vocals of, artists that are not alive anymore. All of those things. Some of them are flipping hilarious. Yeah. Like, all of There I Ruined It guys. There's a plug for the There I Ruined It guys. Those things are crazy hilarious to me. Yeah. And I will watch and listen to those things all day long.
They're very funny. Or the SpongeBob and Plankton metal or hip hop songs.
Oh my gosh.
Those are so amazing. Funny.
But I guess my but is when you basically have a performing artist who doesn't exist, it creates a whole weird question of lots of things, and I'll try to condense it. But like, who gets paid off of that? Like, are we paying AI and Elon Musk and whoever, Google? Like, who's getting paid royalties off of a vocal from somebody that's dead? Like, like who makes all that?
If they don't have an established like like some people have like established, what's the term? Like the people that own their music in perpetuity.
I understand.
Like Elvis has the people that foundation or whatever, the
right.
propriety of that stuff.
Yeah.
But if they don't have that in place, like, and a lot of people don't, because a lot of people never got that big.
Yeah. Well, then take any famous person out of the equation, and you've created a voice that never existed before out of the AI thing. Like, is that artist like real? Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
man,
how do you establish like who that belongs to?
Yeah, contracts, agreements as far as, publishing royalties, blah 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 blah. Like, it creates so many weird questions for me.
Yeah.
The technology blows my mind that it can be done, but to me it creates a ton of different issues that like are completely unnecessary, and like I would never want any. To me, this is kind of how I equate it. You're probably going to think this is crazy. Auto-tune to me is a tool. It's not something to just be used to fix a terrible singer necessarily. Sure. But to me, auto-tune and AI are very similar in the fact that I think AI can be a tool. Like, if there's ways that it can be used to help creatives do things that maybe we couldn't do before, or maybe we need help or whatever it is, I feel like it can be a tool. But I just don't want us to get to the point where AI is like it's like the end all be all, eliminated all creatives. Like that's not what I want it to be about. But that's my
very similar. Like I was thinking as you were talking about it before you even said the auto-tune thing, very similar to like samples. So sample replacement, where it's like it helps in an assistant. So like AI assistant format stuff. Sure. Very, very helpful. Yeah. Love it. For like captioning things, or maybe even helping analyze like,
bad
frequencies or like a beat detective kind of thing. Like what Soothe does, I guess, is kind of AI-y. So like analyzing like these weird frequency spectrums based on what kind of instrument you're trying to EQ. Sure. And then, so there's some helpful things there for sure. But then like that gets compounded into what you're talking about, which is like full replacement, AI replacement, which is like, I definitely agree. That is an overreaching of some stuff, and gets very complicated when it comes to like legality.
For sure. And I'm definitely not opposed to the technology part of things. I just it is not appealing to me to make AI be like a replacement for really anything.
No, and but, I think as we do here. And as, if we're using the drum sample analogy, right? People went full in on drum samples. Still, a lot of people use full drum samples, but a lot of people went back to using real drums.
Sure.
And it became very prominent again. And we've noticed that because we've seen a massive uptick in people going, I want to record drums at your studio.
Sure.
Yeah. And then we use samples to like enhance those things. But it's not like a full replacement. Yeah. So, Brad, what do you got going on right now that you want to tell the people about? What are the things that you want to, as we're wrapping up, like, what do you want to tell the people? Where do you want to send them, all those kind of things?
Yeah. So I guess kind of the last couple things I'll say is the fact that we are definitely moving towards the Dolby Atmos spatial audio thing. I know AI is a thing, but the Dolby Atmos spatial audio thing is something that is still new to a lot of people. Yep. I do believe it's gonna latch hold in the music industry. So
I think in the music and the podcasting industry. Sure. I think we've talked about this a little bit. Yeah, I think people are underestimating how popular spatial audio is going to be in the podcasting industry.
Right. So, we've tried to get ahead of the game, so to speak, and have that availability here, try to have some forward thinking in that process. And I just want to try to keep making records for the independent artists. I'm kind of an independent artist fan, like supporting people who are trying to support their own career. And, that's the bulk of the type of artists that we work with. And
Yeah.
I just want to be a champion for those people and being able to create the best records that we can for them to help them push their career in whatever direction they're going to go.
Yeah.
So like that's what I'm pumped about going forward. And we're doing more podcasting, and all those kind of things that I'm pumped about to be able to be a part of, and just continually to try to evolve, where the studio goes, and hopefully we'll be here 20 more years.
So. No, that'd be great. So the studios is at Studio 101 Record
for Instagram. Yeah.
For Instagram, and I think it's at Studio 101 Media for the podcasting side of things for both of those. And then the Atmos stuff, if you want information about that, you can contact the studio. Brad will get you in contact or get you information or in contact with Donnie, who does a lot of the Atmos stuff. And you can go to, studio101recording.com if you want to book a session or talk about working with, somebody that specializes in your genre of music.
Sure. Love it.
Yeah. Thanks, Brad, for letting me pester you with random questions and get the kind of the backstory of the studio.
Fantastic.
I think people that are interested in the studio will be very interested to hear like the cool kind of ups and downs and randomness of the story of the studio. Thank you guys for listening. And this will be all for this time. We'll catch you next time on the Studio 101 Recording Podcast.